Good morning. Welcome to the Seed Sowing Sister Movement with your lead seed sowing sister, Patrice. Listen to us on VARK Radio, iTunes Radio, and iHeartRadio worldwide. So we've been in Esther for quite some time now, and I got to tell you, I'm enjoying her more and more. I found myself last week when I was going to get my taxes done sharing Esther with pretty much half the room, not even realizing it. I'd gotten so excited about it that people started turning around wanting to find out what I was talking about and where could I find this Esther? And I was like, yeah, in the Bible, man, this is really good. So it was just a pleasure to share with those people just Esther and just share what she's done and how she's excited me in my life. And it was just wonderful to share in that process. So I thank those young men and young ladies for allowing me to let me share my little 2 cents of what excited me, and it's been Esther. So for those who have not been with us in the Seed Sowing Sister Movement for a while, if you're concerned and you say, hey, I haven't caught up on this, Esther, what's going on? Please catch the replays. They are really dynamite, and I would love for you to be able to catch up with us, but not right now, but after we're done. So catch up with us, and then we can join on in, and you can say, wow, I understand now why she's so into this. I got to tell you, Esther has taken on a life of its own. It has become better than any movie you will ever watch. All right, so we're starting in chapter 4. Please make sure you have with you your study Bible or your Bible that you like to use. That can be your tablet, your phone, however you want to do, pen and paper. Let's get into it. So we're starting off with chapter 4. This is now after the law has been put into effect. There has been an edict that they will be going around and moving forward and towards killing the Jews. So we're now in chapter 4. And we find Mordecai has learned of all that has gone on. He has torn his clothes, and he is clothed in sackcloth and ashes. And he's going throughout the city weeping and wailing bitterly. But when he went only as far as the king's gate, because no one clothed in sackcloth was allowed to enter. So I'm going to intermingle our key C's today. The first one is clearly Mordecai identified the trouble. He saw what was coming on the horizon. He didn't just sit back and twiddle his thumbs. He jumped up into action, and he got the moving and grooving and saying, wait, I got to let people know this is going on. And it was just something. It's interesting. When people find gossip, gossip spreads like wildfire. But when you find something that can help someone to educate them, that moves as slow as a turtle who sleeps at night. So let's go to verse 3. In every province in which the edict and the order that the king had given, there was great mourning among the Jews, with fasting, weeping, and wailing, many laid in sackcloth and ashes. Now I want you to think about this. Mordecai has jumped up and got into action, but I love that it wasn't just Mordecai that got into action. All the other Jews who heard about this in their province jumped into action as well. If you'll note in verse 3, it says they immediately changed their clothes. That means, and that's a big thing. Many times people don't realize changing your clothes means changing where you are in your situation. For them, their clothes was joy when they put it on, but when they changed it into sackcloth, everybody automatically knew they were in a time of mourning, a time of sadness. And so this is why they changed into the sackcloth. The ashes symbolized somewhat of death, of what they had seen, and death and the sadness in the moment. So here they are. The other Jews have changed their clothes as well. They're weeping. But the most powerful thing they did, they started fasting because they knew the power of a fast could change a situation. So here we have here in verse 4, when Esther's maids and eunuchs came and told her about Mordecai, and she was in great distress. She sent clothes for him to put on instead of his sackcloth, but he would not accept. Now, I commend Esther for sending him clothes so that he could come to her presence and speak to her and tell her what's going on. But I also feel like Esther tried to cover up his pain. And I want you to think about this. Have you ever been in such a distressful place or in such a painful place, and then someone tried to cover it up? They would say, oh, just get over it, and oh, you'll be fine. Just let time heal it. You don't know what that person is. How dare you tell them how they should react or live in that moment, or don't downplay their pain. They're hurt. I mean, just imagine, and we do it all the time. I'll make it as easy as could be. Think of it. You have a crying baby, and maybe the baby has scraped their hand on something, and you're like, oh, shush, 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 shush. You shush them down immediately, and then you start to clean up the wound and such. Now, for many people, it sounds very innocent, but for that baby, you're shushing them down. They're in pain. They're hurt. They want to be heard. That goes along with key seed number 2. Malachi immediately positioned himself in a place to be heard. He didn't just sit in his house and dwell in what was going on. He immediately jumped up and went to the palace. He knew if he went to the palace, he could get to the queen in some way, shape, fashion, or form. If it wasn't getting to her in person, he can get to her maids or her eunuchs. Someone will be able to get a message to her, to get him to be heard. So he automatically positioned himself to be heard. Key seed number 2A. He immediately, when he spoke with her eunuch, and let's go back a little bit. She sends his clothes out for him. He doesn't accept. Then Esther summons her eunuch and assigns this eunuch to go speak to Mordecai to find out what's troubling him and why. And then when this eunuch comes back out, they go out not close to the gate, but in the open square in front of the king's gate. And then Mordecai opens up and starts to tell everything that has happened to him, including the exact amount of money that Haman had promised to pay in the royal treasury for the destruction of the Jews. Now, let's dig a little deeper. They've gotten here. He immediately gets up, Mordecai immediately gets up and runs to the king's palace. He goes here. Esther tries to give him clothes. He declines. She sends out a eunuch to go and speak to him to find out what is the part of his distress, what is making him so sad, so hurt. And at this point, he opens up. He talks to the eunuch. Now, isn't it interesting? He could have went and did one of these, I don't want to talk to you moments, but he went and said, you know what, this is someone who Esther has sent to me, who wants to know what's troubling me. And that one conversation changed, really, the path and the face of a nation. Can you imagine being that messenger who today is just, hey, I want to find out what's causing distress, and then finding out a couple of months later, hey, you actually saved the nation by delivering a message from a person who was hurt to a person who could solve the pain or ease the pain. So we have key seed 2A. Talk to someone who could change the situation. Now at this point, you have Queen Esther who sends this person down. She actually sends a messenger on a mission. This was this messenger's job. This was for them to go find out what's going on with Mordecai. Once he finds out, Mordecai doesn't stand there and become automatically the tough guy. Mordecai says, I got to tell you everything what's going on so you know what's happening in the kingdom around you. Because how many times do you know when you've made it up to a higher level, you may not know all that's going on in the company. I could think of a very clear example where I'm currently working. And in this particular department, we're all here, we're all a part of it, all on the same floor, but there's certain things that go on the floor that I may not have a clue about. And then there's people on the other side of the building that have things that go on their floor no one may not have a clue about. It's not that it's all bad communication, it's just some pieces people may not feel we need to know. Kind of they feel like we might even on that need to know basis. So in this case, this was that you need to know what's going on in the kingdom basis. And I commend Mordecai for not sitting still. I commend him for being a man of action, for getting out here and saying, hey, if I don't speak up, somebody else is going to pass away because of me being silent. So we get here. Mordecai speaks to the servant. They get here in the front of the king's gate, and Mordecai tells everything. He tells them everything that happens, including the amount of money that Haman promised to pay into the royal treasury for the destruction of the Jews. And then I love that he not only tells them, he even has proof, or like we had to call in these days, receipts. He brought an actual copy of the actual decree or declare of the text. And he says, here, let me give this to you so you can see what's been published, what's been put out in the city of Susa, to show Esther and explain to her with the urgency and let her understand that it is her job to get in the king's presence to beg for the mercy, to plead with him, not just for Mordecai, but for her people. So let's go a step further. So we've covered key seed number 3. Key seed number 3 is that you are a messenger on a mission. Key seed 3A is easy. One conversation can change everything. When Mordecai opened up to the servant, he was honest, open, and brought proof of what was happening in the community. And then what I like about it for key seed 3B was that he actually gave instructions to the messenger to give to Esther and tell her, hey, listen, I need you now to step up. You've got to get into the king's presence. You've got to, beg for his mercy, plead for not just me, but for our people. So key seed 3B is where Mordecai gave Esther instruction. Key seed number 4, and I love this one. This really did something for me. It comes directly from verses 9 through 13. So the servant went back and reported to Esther what Mordecai had said. Then she instructed him to say to Mordecai, all of the king's officials and the people of the royal province know that for any man or woman who approaches the king in the inner court without being summoned, the king has but one law, and that's to put the person to death. The other exception is this, for the king to extend the royal gold scepter to him or her and spare their life. But 30 days have passed since I was called to go to the king. So here you see that it's been 30 days that she's been called. But I love that Esther was so astute that she didn't just look and say, well, I have the palace and I'm in here. She actually knew the rules of the palace. So she was what we would call a smart first lady in this kingdom. She wasn't just a figurehead. She actually knew the ins and outs. She knew the laws of what could affect her in this situation and what could not. But I love how this conversation goes, starting at verse 12. When Esther's words were reported to Mordecai, he sent back this answer. Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. Now, I'm going to tell you why I love that. Because sometimes people get in positions and they tend to think, well, I'm safe here. Nothing happened to me. I'm needed. They can't go on without me. And I love how he gave her a gentle reminder. He didn't embarrass her, but he gave her a gentle reminder. Remember, just because you're up there today doesn't mean that you can't be thrown out tomorrow. And I love that he let her know that, guess what? You're in the palace, but who's to say that you will escape? Because guess what? We already know that back in chapter 3, the earlier part, that the other people that worked with Mordecai knew that he was a Jew. And they already knew that he had a niece that he was taking care of. So I can imagine they were putting 2 and 2 together going, wait a minute. At one point, they was like, hey, it's a young lady of Jewish descent in the kingdom, in the palace. And then I can think on the other hand where they were saying, well, you know what? She can be the person to save her. I wonder how that worked out. All right, verse 14. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows that you have been selected for this royal position for such a time as this? Verse 14 is very important, and I want to really kind of highlight that one in our key seed. If you're writing with me, we're on key seed 5. Key seed 5. Knowing when it is time to open your mouth and be heard. That's the big one. Because here she is the queen in this palace. We've seen what happened to the other queen, Queen Vashti, when she opened her mouth and did not follow through. She was removed. So now you're saying, again, here we go. I have to go up here and I have to speak for my people and for also me, for myself. So you have to know, when do you open your mouth and when do you speak to be heard? 5a, Key Seed 5a says, remember that God has chosen you to do the task. Now, I'm sure when Esther got into this, she didn't think at the beginning that she would be chosen to really lead a nation of people away from death. I'm sure she didn't think that. I'm sure she thought, well, hey, I'll be a queen. I'll be in the palace. Hey, at least they'll be able to see me. This is what this is. You know, I'll get involved with a few things, but I won't have much to do because I'll be the queen. The king pretty much runs the show. But lo and behold, God had chosen her for a time such as this, that she was able to go and make a difference in how the kingdom will be ran and save these people. And it's interesting because, and I put this as my side note, Mordecai brought it out and said, remember, if you remain silent, there will be deliverance from somewhere else. And I thought about this, and I said, you know, it's funny. Many times, and I say this quite a bit with the young men that I work with, I always say, remember, if you're silent, you consent to whatever's going on around you, which basically means you agree. You have to know when you need to speak up, because sometimes your silence can truly be deadly. So remember that if you are silent or unresponsive to God, He will choose someone else to provide the deliverance or relief to the people that you were originally assigned to. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't want to get to the heavenly gate on the day of judgment and know that He had chosen me to save a certain population of people or a certain person, and because I sat silent or I was unresponded to God or I didn't give the proper response to God, that He had to choose someone else to take my place for the task that He gave me. So let's go a little deeper. When we get down to verse 15, it says, then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai, go gather together all the Jews who are in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days or 3 nights. I and my maids will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish. So Mordecai went away and carried off all of Esther's instructions. So let's go to Key Seed 6 with this one. I love how Esther knew that she was one given instructions, because if you notice this whole interplay with her and Mordecai, this whole conversation is filled with instruction. It's filled with things that, hey, you need to do this. I need you to get out and do that. Then I love how she says, you know what, go and gather all the Jews. And she gives another instructions. And she says, I want you all to go together, get gathered together, and know that we're going to fast. She literally had a corporate fast. She brought together her community and had a corporate fast where she was fasting for a purpose, a community purpose, honestly, to save her community. She even gave them a timeline on it. She said, listen, we're not going to eat, we're not going to drink, we're going to have an absolute total fast for 3 days. Then she even said she doesn't just give the instruction, she follows the instruction herself. Because many people figure it's easier to give the instruction, but are you really following the instruction? And she even gave me a great mark of what a leader looks like. A leader doesn't just say, hey, you do this. They say, you know what? If you're going to do it, I'm going to lead the charge and I'm going to do it just as well. And she started and said, I tell you what, as you all begin to fast, I will fast as well. Then I love how she got here. She knew immediately that she needed to use other people besides herself. She brought in the community. Everyone was on this fast. She gave them a clear instruction with a timeline. She not only gave the instruction, she followed the instruction herself. And I love when she got to this line where she said, and if I perish, I perish. She took full accountability for her actions. She didn't make excuses. She didn't say, well, hey, that's your business. I'm good. She really was a woman after God's own heart. She took the brunt of the community on her shoulders. She wanted to be that woman who made a change and made a difference. It didn't come about the way she thought it would be, I'm pretty sure, but she really made a difference and she made a change that ultimately saved this nation. So let's do a review of our key seeds for today. Key seed number 1 was that Mordecai clearly identified the trouble that had come his way and he jumped into action. Key seed 1A was where the people took action. They changed their clothes, they wept, and they were fasting. Along with key seed 1A was position yourself to be heard. Key seed number 2 was talk to someone who can change the situation. Key seed 2A was when you are in distress, identify someone who's able to empathize and sympathize with you. The side note we have for 2 was don't try to hide your pain. Key seed number 3 was that you are a messenger on a mission. That's what you've been called to be. You've called to be a messenger, a mouthpiece for the kingdom. Key seed 3A was that one conversation can change everything. Along with that, key seed 3A or 3B, was that Esther was given instruction. Key seed number 4 was just because today you're not the person that's being told or said something negatively to, doesn't mean tomorrow you won't be that person. Key seed number 5, remember that God has chosen you to do the task. Key seed 5A, knowing when it is time to open your mouth and to be heard. And this was the side note for 5. If you are silent or unresponsive to God, He will choose someone else to provide the relief and the deliverance to the people you were originally assigned to. Key seed number 6, remember there were more instructions given, but you also need to know when you need help outside of your immediate circle. And when we talked about those instructions, there were clear instructions given with a timeline. The leadership not just gave the instructions, but they also followed the instructions. The leadership would be Esther. And as well, she took full accountability for her actions. So I want to thank you for joining me today in another wonderful installment about Esther for Chapter 4. And I thank you for being a part of your day. I thank you for letting me be a part of your day. Hey, remember, I want to get more of our highlights out. We haven't had a chance to do a lot of our community highlights recently. So please, if you know that there is a teacher that you know is going over and beyond in and outside of the classroom, or you just say, hey, I want to nominate this teacher to tell them what a great job they're doing. If you know of a veteran that you would like to nominate for one of our community heroes or sheroes, please nominate them. Please send me their information at the seed sowing sister movement at gmail.com, or you can even share with us that community hero or shero on our Facebook page at the Seed Sowing Sister Movement page on Facebook. We will be expanding into a new um, social media site. So we'll be getting into that soon. I will give you more details as we go. I thank you so much for joining me today. Let's get on out and go and be great because we are great. Have a great rest of the day. And I look forward to seeing you for next week. Oh, before I forget, let me share this. Next week's topic, we're still in Esther, but we're jumping into two chapters into one. Our topic will be dining with disaster to get to destiny. Man, that sounds like a great topic. So listen, I look forward to you being here. Have a great day.